providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler. Today we have a big-time guest. Alan Stein Jr. was a world-class performance coach who has trained some of the best in the NBA. He is now working with top CEOs across the country as an executive business coach. He also hosts a very popular podcast called Pure Sweat Basketball. Some of the guests that he's had include ESPN's Jay Bilas, Reese Davis, Mark Cuban, Gary Vaynerchuk, Coach K, Tom Izzo, and Kevin Durant, just to name a few. We are very honored to have Alan Stein Jr. on the program. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You have added a lot of value to basketball coaches and players throughout the years as the top performance coach out there. In fact, I used a lot of your drills and exercises with my teams. Tell us a little bit about how it has been going as you transition from the athletic performance space into the corporate executive space.
It's been phenomenal so far. I mean, I'm still in the beginning stages of it, but I found that most of what I've been fortunate to learn through my primary passion of basketball and of performance work resonates very highly with folks in the corporate space. You know, the tenets of leadership and building team cohesion and creating culture and developing habits and, being the best you can be during the unseen hours. These are things that anyone that wants to be successful needs to do. And that's why I love the title of the show, Success is a Choice, because pouring into those things and working on your craft and developing habits, those are all choices that we make, and we make them every single day. And when you continue to make good choices and you build them into being habits, you see yourself become more successful and, equally as important, more happy and fulfilled. I think we could also say that happiness and fulfillment are also choices based on these decisions that we make. So I found so far it's resonated really well. Most people that I've come across have an appreciation and a respect for sport. Even if they haven't played it since they were younger, they know the type of work and commitment and passion that athletes and coaches pour into their craft, and they want to, mine some of that gold and do the same thing in their respective businesses.
It's interesting that you mentioned our show title of Success is a Choice, because there was an article on CNBC's website in early September in which you were interviewed, and the section that contains your story and quotes was entitled Success is a Choice. The topic of the article was about a summer camp for adults that was hosted by Jesse Itzler, part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. What was that experience like?
Sure, and I actually got that. Rick Pitino had written a book right around the time I was graduating college back in the mid-'90s that was called Success is a Choice, and that's one that I've always embraced, because I'll admit, for the first more than half of my life, I don't know that I really internalized that. I thought success kind of was luck, kind of was happenstance, kind of was where you grew up, kind of was who your parents were. It was kind of a lot of actually a choice. And the way that I work backwards in that is it's your habits that determine whether or not you're successful. It's not the things you do every once in a while or the things you do when you feel like it or the things you do when it's convenient. Your success is predicated on the things that you do every single day. And then if you go back one more layer, we actually choose our habits. We create our habits. Now, I know many of them are to the point where they're in our unconscious. We don't even realize we're doing them, but those were habits that we've created at some point. So I think if you say that I'm in charge of creating my habits and my habits ultimately determine whether or not I'm successful, then the only mathematical result of that is exactly what your show is called. Success is a choice. And ever since I was able to internalize that, and then as I said, view happiness and fulfillment in the same way, my life has been radically changed since. Back to your original question about the camp, people always know about bucket lists. And for me, I don't really have material items on my bucket list. I have a people bucket list, and these are people that I really want to meet. And then I have an experiences bucket list, which are places I'd like to go and things I'd like to do. And Jesse Itzler, who you just mentioned, he's a serial entrepreneur. He's an author. He's an incredible endurance athlete. He's a part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. He's been on my personal bucket list for almost a decade, and I really admired and respected him from afar for a long time, and finally had an opportunity to meet him at this retreat he was holding. And yeah, he's a guy that literally is living the embodiment of success being a choice, because he's put in the work and he's deserved that success. And he created this retreat where he vetted about 30 different people from all different walks of life, different backgrounds, different cultures, different ages, from different countries, to come in and be a part of something that I guess adult camp is the best way to describe it. But, I mean, we did stuff to work on our mental acuity. We did stuff to improve our mental and physical health. So it was part workout, part eating healthy food, part listening to speakers for our professional development, part connecting with other people and having some very vulnerable talks. I mean, it was a really transformational experience for me. And I without question, left a better man with a better perspective and more clarity than when I went in.
As a performance coach, you had to stay in good shape and have made physical condition a big part of your life. But Jesse Itzler provided you with quite a fascinating physical challenge that you probably had never faced before. Could you share that story with our audience?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So to give you the true backstory, I've been admiring and following Jesse Itzler, like I said, for close to 10 years, but especially the last couple years. And once I decided to make the leap into the corporate space, I started doing some unsolicited emails and some unsolicited social inquiries, just saying, hey, man, I love what you do. I respect you. Here's the space I'm in now in the corporate world. If you know of anyone that could use a speaker, please keep me in mind. And he was always very professional and very gracious, getting back to saying, hey, Alan, nice to meet you, but I don't really have anything at the moment. And I always took that, as a positive. I appreciated him getting back. Then really early in the summer, I get an unsolicited email from him and says, hey, as luck would have it, I'm putting on this really exclusive retreat, and I would like to bring you in as one of the speakers. And I'll say to this day, it's one of the best emails that I've ever received. I mean, I was just elated reading it, and I replied to him in like 0.2 seconds and said, yes, I'll be there. I didn't even know the date. I didn't know the times. I didn't know where it was. I mean, this thing could have been in, it could have been in Indonesia, and I was going to be there. And it worked out well. And as I said, the retreat was incredible. And then at the retreat, he said, well, shoot, man, next week I'm holding this annual event that I hold. It's called Hell on the Hill. Why don't you come back next week? And I was like, sure, man, that sounds cool. And he gave me a little bit of details on what it was, but I wasn't real familiar. And I was scheduled, as an amicably divorced father, I was scheduled to have my children that next weekend, and they're definitely my number one priority. But I got it to work out where they could come with me on the trip to do this thing called Hell on the Hill. And Jesse is and I say this with due respect, he is an insane endurance athlete. He's run 100-mile races. He's done 24-hour races. I mean, he's, marathons are child's play to a guy like this. So I should have known going into it that anything that he says is hard and borderline ridiculous. So he has it at his home in New Fair, Connecticut. It's 80 yards long, and it's a 40-degree slope, which is a really, really steep hill. The average treadmill in a gym only goes up to 15%. And even that is a really steep incline. And the goal is to run it 100 times. So you have to run up an 80-yard hill at a 40-degree slope. But what many people don't realize is going down that hill takes a major toll on your body as well. And you had to do it 100 times, so it was very aptly named Hell on the Hill. What made it really interesting, Jesse and his wife Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx. Sarah is the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. She is a brilliant, brilliant mind and a wonderful woman. The two of them were going to donate $1,000 to the charity of each runner's choice if they completed the 100 reps. So there were 70 of us running, and they ended up donating $70,000 to 70 different charities. So that also shows how altruistic and philanthropic they are to be able to give those, to be able to do that. So it was more than just running up a hill. There was a social component. But it was extremely challenging. And, I'm not an endurance athlete, so even though I have a high level of fitness for just the average 41-year-old walking the earth, I was not physically prepared for that event, and that's one of the reasons that it kicked my butt so hard. I will do it again next year, and I'll actually train for it, so hopefully I can do a little better. But, yeah, as you mentioned, man, it was physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausting. When I got to rep close to 70, man, I started having major doubt that I was even going to be able to finish. And, I'm a positive guy. I'm an optimistic guy. So I very rarely allow negative self-talk to creep in, but it started. And luckily I was kind of able to push through that. One story that I think you'll appreciate, Steve Wojciechowski who's the head basketball coach at Marquette now and was an amazing All-American at Duke and assistant at Duke under Coach K. He was also there. He and I had been friends for a while, and I had felt we were on about the same pace the entire time. So when I got to around 70, and this is 3 hours in now, and I was really having this doubt, and I was spent, I was struggling, and I said to him, how many do you have left? And he said, I got 1 rep. And I was like, wait a second, man, there ain't no way you only have 1 rep left. I was almost pissed off that that's what he said. And then he just smiled and finished his sentence and said, I have 1 rep 30 more times. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's the definition of living in the present moment. And you don't focus on the 100 reps or the 30 reps. You just focus on the one in front of you. Just go up and down that hill 1 more time. And then when you do that, go up and down that hill 1 more time. And really that mindset, accompanied with my kids cheering me on, is what got me through. And I'm proud to say it took me a hair over 4 hours, but I did complete all 100 reps, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm already looking forward to next year, being able to train and see if I can do it a little faster.
Congratulations on doing that. Sounds like quite the achievement and challenge to overcome. You're a positive guy already, but Wojo just gave you a new perspective on having a positive mindset. Now, as I understand, you are not quite done with Jesse Itzler and his challenges. It seems he has another one that you will be embarking on soon.
Sure, yeah. Jesse is he's rented out Stratton Mountain, which is a mountain in Vermont, and I didn't know one could even rent an entire mountain, but he's found a way, and he's going to have close to 200 tents at the base of the mountain. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with glamping. I wasn't, but it's kind of glamour camping. So these tents are not your typical Boy Scout pop-up tents. They have hardwood floors. They have heating and air conditioning. They're really nice tents. And we have to scale Stratton Mountain, which is about 1.2 miles to the top. You have to do that 17 times over the course of a weekend, and that will add up to the exact elevation of Mount Everest, which is 29,029 feet. So the event is called 29029, and you do it at your own pace. There'll be a lot of people there, so it'll be a great chance to network and make some new friends and connections. But you basically power walk or run or whatever you want to do to the top, and then you take a gondola back down. And again, you do it at your own pace. So I've been told that it's probably smart to try and knock out 6 or 7 of them on that first Friday night, and then knock out the bulk of them on Saturday, so you get most of your heavy lifting done. And now what will make this one interesting is, it's not necessarily a steady grade or a slope. You're climbing up a mountain. So I don't know what the terrain will look like, but it'll be fascinating to say the least. But again, I'm going to go into it with this new mindset that Coach Wojo taught of just worry about the one. Don't worry about 17. Just worry about the one. The guy that's directing it said that for someone of pretty decent fitness level, which is what he categorized me, he said it'll take about an hour round trip. To power walk up to the top and take the gondola back down will be an hour round trip. So I'm certainly not a math or statistics major, but I can do that math pretty quickly. That's 17 hours of hiking over the course of a weekend. So I know that it's going to be a challenge, and my number one goal is certainly to finish. But I also go into it saying, I want to make some new friends. I want to make some new connections. I want to share with some other people. I want to get myself out of my comfort zone and do something that I've never done before. So even though the goal is to go up and down 17 times, there's so many other things that I look forward to getting from that weekend, and I'm really excited about it.
We'll be sure to put a link to 29029 in our show notes so people can check that out. We'll be getting back to this great discussion with Alan Stein in just a moment, but right now I want to let you know about HostGator, who will give our listeners up to 50% off the retail price on website services just by using the coupon code SUCCESS. HostGator.com is a sponsor for today's podcast. You know, Alan Stein has had Mark Cuban on his podcast, and Mark Cuban is a technology billionaire. Well, I might be a tech hundredaire, which is why I needed HostGator. This past summer, PC Mag rated HostGator as their top choice for novice webmasters, which is exactly what I am. I'm a novice webmaster. If you want a cheap and easy website, then use coupon code SUCCESS at HostGator.com. Now let's get back to hearing more from Alan Stein. Not all of your recent challenges have been physical. You recently did your first TEDx talk. Your topic was about living in the present. What was that TEDx experience like?
It was an amazing experience from start to finish. I've been a huge fan of the TED Talks for as long as I can remember. I mean, even just into my coaching days. And then, of course, once I decided to make the leap into speaking to corporate groups, I really started honing down and studying those TED Talks. And, they're short by design. By definition, they have to be less than 18 minutes. So, I'm used to giving hour keynote talks. So that means already I've got to be prepared to give something less than a third of what I've been doing. And as you can probably appreciate as a very experienced and polished speaker, the shorter your talk, the harder it is, because you have to have razor sharp focus and precision. If I'm giving an hour keynote, I have the leeway to go off on a little bit of a tangent for 30 seconds or to switch something up, because I can always make up for it in 60 minutes. My TED Talk was 10 minutes to the second, which means, I got to be running in a straight line. I can't veer off at all. So that almost made it, it was a different challenge, and that was one of the reasons that I did it. Certainly TEDx, which are independently run events, so these are not part of the big TED Talks, even though they're branded similarly. I just looked at it as a new challenge for me and something that I'd always enjoyed consuming and watching and learning from. So to have an opportunity to be on that stage and to share something that's important to me with other people, I was really excited about, and it was a neat challenge. I feel that it went well, and I did. I talked about respecting and appreciating time so that you can learn to live in the present moment, because that's really all that we have. And for the vast majority of us, myself included, constantly struggle with, thinking about something that happened in the past, whether that was 5 minutes ago or 5 days ago or 5 years ago, is not living in the past. Or we get consumed by worrying about tomorrow. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next weekend? And I find that when we spend too much time in the past or in the future, it robs ourselves of the enjoyment of being in the present moment. And I believe completely that success is also directly tied to your ability to live in the present moment, that the only way you can be great at anything in any domain is to be fully dialed in at the present moment. And, perfect example. Right now, I'm not also flipping through my phone. I'm not watching a YouTube video in the background. I'm not cutting my toenails. I'm not doing anything other than focusing on you and hopefully serving your audience. And because of that, I'll be able to do the best that I'm capable of. If I was diverting my time and, I'm worried about an interview I did yesterday, or I'm worried about a talk I'm giving tomorrow, or like I said, I'm allowing the minutia of distractions to consume my attention, then I would not be able to deliver to you to the best of my ability. So success is also highly tied to our ability to live in the present moment.
You know a little bit about interviews and podcasting. You host something called the Pure Sweat Basketball Show, which has had absolutely amazing guests, from famous NBA players to ESPN announcers to even Mark Cuban. What have been some common threads or some common traits you've seen in the people that you interview that have made them successful?
Well, I love your humility, man, but don't forget, we also had Jamy Bechler on this show, and you knocked it out of the park, man. You were a tremendous guest and really loved having you on. So if anyone is going to go check the Pure Sweat Basketball Show out, start with Jamie's interview, because it was really solid. It is interesting that whether you're talking about someone like a Mark Cuban, who's been a titan in the business world, or you're talking to Kevin Durant, who's one of the best players in the world, or you're talking to Tom Izzo, who's probably on the current college basketball Mount Rushmore, or even my buddy Jay Bilas from ESPN, it's neat that despite their different backgrounds and different areas of specificity, that they have so many traits that are similar. And one of the traits that unites all of these guys is they never get bored with the basics. They stay committed to doing the little things that build success, which again goes back to success being a choice. And that sounds really easy to do, but we happen to live in a society that's always wanting us to skip steps and to circumvent the process and to chase what's hot and what's flashy and what's sexy and just ignore what's basic. But whether we're talking coaching or in life or in business, the basics work. They always have, and they always will. And these guys are always committed to doing the basics first, the fundamentals of whatever it is that they need to do, and then being able to level up from there. They all have an extremely high level of focus and level of passion for what they do. You can tell just by within 2 seconds of talking to them that they love what they're doing. And I think, again, these things are very basic, and most people want to hear something spectacular that makes those guys successful, but it's that commitment to the basics. They're all, regardless of their position, They're into serving. They're into solving problems. They're into making the world better, first in their own backyard, making their world better, whether that's the team they play for or the team they coach or the business they run, is making that better first, and then, expanding out from there, and what can they do to really make everything else better. And that servant leadership mindset is something that they all share. Again, they do little things. They're constantly energy givers. They want to fill other people's buckets. They take pride in lifting other people up, regardless of their leadership style. I mean, Tom Izzo is a very vocal, fiery coach. Kevin Durant is usually more of a quiet, more reserved player from a vocal standpoint. So they have different styles, but their commitment to making their team and teammates better is identical.
You have interviewed very successful people on your podcast. You've worked with DeMatha High School, which is one of the top, if not the top, boys basketball programs in the country. You've worked with so many successful leaders, million-dollar companies. You put out great content on social media. Looking back on your career, not that it's over, of course. In fact, you have a bright future ahead of you as you pivot more into the corporate space. But looking back on your career up to this point, what are some things that stand out to you or that you are most proud of?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I realized that in order for me to have had those opportunities, someone has had to reach a hand down to me and help me and pull me up. Someone has had to, support me and love me and yet challenge me at the same time. And I now, at my age, have the humility to appreciate that, and that no one builds their own success on their own, that it takes other people in your life. And for that, I'm truly indebted to a long list of people that have helped me with those opportunities. But they've also taught me that humility is one of the most important characteristics for anyone to have, not only as a leader, but just as a human being. And to have the humility to say, and that's the part that I've loved, is even somebody as confident as some of the best players and coaches are, they still have the humility to realize they can still get better. Yes, they're great, but they can still get even better, and that takes humility. I've also learned that self-awareness is an incredibly valuable tool, and the more you can know yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, the better you can serve, and you'll be able to really maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. So those traits have been unconsciously taught to me by these great people that I've had a chance to be around. And, as I know you appreciate as well, leadership is all about producing other leaders and empowering other people. It's not just trying to get this long list of people to follow you everywhere you go and do everything you say. It's about making other leaders. And, when I did interview Tom Izzo for our show a couple years ago, he said a player-led team will always outperform a coach-led team. And that just shocked me to hear that coming from such a renowned coach. And he's like, man, my goal is to produce 15 leaders every single year that Michigan State takes to court, because when we do that, we'll be so much better. And I realized that took confidence and humility on his part to be able to pass the torch and let others lead the program. But that's one of the reasons he's so great at what he does. And, I've seen that replicated with Mike Jones at DeMatha, from a humility standpoint. DeMatha has been on the national radar since they beat Lou Alcindor and Power Memorial High School in 1965. So you're talking over 50 years of being a national program. And Coach Jones lets our players know and says, hey, realize that the reason you're wearing Nike, the reason you're playing in this amazing arena, the reason you get to go on ESPN is not because of what you've done. It's because of what the group before you did and the group before them did. They laid the foundation for you, and now it's your obligation to lay the foundation for the next group that will be, to be able to wear the DeMatha basketball jersey. And I think, again, that comes from a position of humility, and it's something that makes the DeMatha program in that particular case very, very special.
Alan, where can people connect with you or learn more about you?
AlanSteinJr.com is my website and my major hub, and then I'm at Alan Stein Jr. on most of the primary social platforms, and I try to stay very active on there, as I know you do. Love the stuff that you put out. I try to use those as ways just to share. I may not be a creator of a ton of content, but I like considering myself a curator of content. So if I get a nugget from a Tom Izzo or I get a nugget from a Jamy Bechler, I want to make sure that I'm putting that out there to my following so that they can benefit from anything that I've benefited from as well. But if any of your listeners, want to connect on social, I would love for them to give me a shout. Always looking to make new connections and pour into and fill buckets with other people.
Excellent. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes as well. Alan, we want to finish up with just a couple rapid-fire questions. Some books or podcasts that you're currently listening to or you would recommend?
I just got turned on to a podcast. It's on NPR. Guy Raz is the host, and it's called How I Built This. And it actually is digging into some of the most renowned CEOs in the world today, those that started Airbnb and Uber, and how did you start something that's literally changed culture, not just a successful business, but created a new category or shifted culture. So I've been diving into that, and those interviews are really good. Guy Raz is a tremendous interviewer, gets some great stuff from his guests, so I absolutely love that.
Who would you like to meet? You mentioned Jesse Itzler was kind of on your bucket list. Who is someone else that you'd like to meet that you don't already know?
Tony Robbins is the next person that I've identified on my bucket list. He's someone I've admired from afar, and I want to aim high. It's kind of neat. When I started this bucket list, Coach K was the first person on it, and I had a chance to meet him. Gary Vaynerchuk was on it, had a chance to meet him, and then Jesse Itzler was the most recent. And now I'm gonna go ahead and say Tony Robbins. And I don't really put a timetable on it, so it's not like if I don't meet him in 2018, I failed. But he's the next person, and that's just the one that I've singled out. I mean, I'm not doing it justice to say that there's dozens of other people out there that I really respect and admire from afar, and would just be it'd be amazing to have a chance to meet them. But
does Tony know this yet? Well, Tony, if you're listening to this, check the show notes and you can find Alan's information.
I was going to say there's a better than average chance that he listens to your podcast, so I appreciate that plug. You're a good man.
As you said earlier, you're not a math major. You're not good at math, so better than average I don't think is correct, but thank you. What's one of your favorite quotes?
This one is going to sound like the simplest quote in the world, but it's really, really, really deep, and I use it in all my talks now. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And the whole point is, obviously, if you want something in your life to change, if you're not reaching the success that you believe you deserve, or the happiness that you feel you should have, or the fulfillment, well, you need to change something that you're doing. Because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting. If you don't like what you've been getting, then stop doing what you've been doing. So that's why I love that. If nothing changes, well, then nothing changes.
What is a productivity tool or an app or a resource that you would have a hard time doing without?
I recently started, and this was at the time of the Jesse Itzler retreat, I downloaded a meditation app called Headspace. It's a guided app. And people have been telling me for years that I need to try meditation. And for whatever reason, the connotation to that to me was kind of foo-foo and woo-woo, and that's not my style. But finally, I had enough people tell me that, look, man, follow this guided meditation app, 10 minutes in the morning when you wake up, and if you feel compelled, 10 minutes before you go to sleep. And it will help you relieve some stress and anxiety. It will improve your mindfulness. It will help you stay present. It will actually help you lower your heart rate. I mean, all sorts of things. So I finally said, you know what, I'll do it. And today, at the time of this recording, is my 57th straight day of starting my morning with the Headspace app, and I absolutely love it. And I know you asked for a kind of a productivity hack. I do believe that starting my day with kind of that serenity feeling and having the mindfulness and presence absolutely helps me become so much more productive during the day, especially during the morning as soon as I'm done.
And that's great. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. Final question. I mean, you're doing what you love. You're good at it. But if you could do something else, if you could do any other job, what would it be?
My goodness, that is a great question. I've always let my heart kind of guide what it was that I've done. And, the iterations of starting in basketball and basketball performance, because that's where my heart was. But then as I got older, I realized that basketball was merely the platform, that my actual purpose was to teach life lessons to younger people. And then as I started to embrace that, started to realize that most of the lessons that I wanted to teach them fell under the umbrella of leadership, fell under the umbrella of teamwork and culture. And then the last iteration is taking to the corporate space, maybe switch over to being a teacher. I've always had the entrepreneurial mindset, so it kind of constrains me to think that I would be stuck in a classroom from 9 to 3 every day. And I say that respectfully. I adore, respect, and love teachers. So I don't know if I'd be better suited for that. But I know that anything that I would transition into, I know this is a very long-winded answer, would have to be pouring into young people. That's something that's very, very, very important to me. So any job where I could pour into young people is probably what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this corporate leadership track.
Great insights today, Alan. You gave us a lot to unpack and think about. Thanks so much for sharing and taking time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man. Anytime.
Those insights and stories were awesome today. Alan has interviewed people like Mark Cuban, Kevin Durant, and Tom Izzo on his own podcast, so it was fun to flip the script and get him in the hot seat today. Please make sure that you just take a second to hit that little subscribe button so that you don't miss any future episodes. It will also help other people find this podcast as well. Thanks so much, and until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?